All right, so for the last week, what I want you to do is to be able to write a tax memorandum. I think this would be helpful to you if you're planning to be a CPA, unless you're going to work for a Big Four firm where you're going to specialize. If you're going to work at a small firm, probably about 50%, maybe even more of what you'll do is work on tax type issues. And so I think it would be very helpful for you to learn how to write a tax memorandum. I think it would put you head and shoulders above other graduates who are looking for jobs at those firms. And I want you to take this very seriously, because what you can come away with in this assignment is something that you can show a future employer, a potential future employer. So please take this very serious. Now, the assignment is to write a one-page, single-spaced tax research memorandum concerning the facts below. And so I give you the facts, and take and look through Chapter 2. If you don't remember, it's something that was covered in the basic income tax class. And if you don't remember authorities and stuff like that, and jurisdiction and precedents and all that stuff, go back and look, because you're going to need to know that stuff when you're researching and writing this paper. Okay? And so this lady has these expenses and this income from her home-based business, and the question is, what federal income tax deductions is she eligible to take? So, you got a couple of issues. The main thing that you have to do when you're reading this stuff is spotting the issues. And so hopefully some of the issues between the two semesters of tax that you've had should just kind of pop out. Okay? So make sure you read this and figure out what the issues are. Now, when it comes down to tax research itself, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage in that we don't have these tax services, such as CCH and RIA. If we did, it would cost the university probably about $35,000, maybe even more. That was the cost 5 years ago. So, it might be 40 or 50,000 now. They're just, and that's for a year's subscription. So, university's not going to pay that kind of money, obviously. But the good news is, if there is any good news there, is that this is not unlike small and even medium-sized firms. Many of them get these tax issues and you being the junior, the new accountant, the new guy or girl, you have to research it with whatever you have, and it's usually not this tax service, because they don't want to spend that kind of money either. They can't afford it. All right, So let's go through this just real quick. First thing you do, understand the facts. Read, reread, and reread the facts. Now, these are obviously, this is obviously a closed fact situation, so the events have already occurred. So all you have to do is figure out, based upon the law, what can this taxpayer do and not do. Formulate, after you read and understand the facts, make sure you identify the issues. You can do so, you just jot down stuff as you think of it as you're reading. But probably the best thing to do when you figure out what the issues are is formulate the issue and the situation concerning the client into some sort of excuse me, question. So, and that's kind of what they've done in this memorandum that we'll show you here in a second. Okay, so identifying the issues is a big part of helping your client. And of course, some of this comes with experience, but this is a pretty basic fact situation. I mean, this is not complicated at all. The facts and the issues in this fact situation literally should pop out at you. Okay. Now, again, here, this is where you're going to have some roadblocks. You don't have these tax services. If you work at a place that has this stuff, you'll probably get this done in a couple hours or less. If you don't, it's going to take a little more work. No doubt about it. But you've got to locate relevant authorities. What authorities are there? Well, there's code sections, the regulations, the court cases, revenue rulings, etc., etc., etc. And so it's going to take some work, but I guarantee you doing this now will make you a better researcher if and when you come to do this in the future. All right. Analyzing the tax authorities. This is where you take and synthesize the facts of the case with the law. You apply the law to the facts, and then you're going to come up, and here we have the memorandum, okay? I'll get back, hopefully, to my point. And so here's the format. Well, this is basically a file memorandum. This is not the client letter. This is a little more detailed, actually more detailed than the client letter. And so look, you got the introductory stuff, you got the facts. From the facts, the author of this memorandum has formulated the issue. Below that, he or she has outlined, well, let's see, who is the preparer? Joe's staff. So he has outlined the issue, given the authorities that he has researched and found that apply to this situation. This is just a summary of the authorities. He gives a summary conclusion, just a short statement concerning the issue. Notice that the issue is formulated, well, is in question form. And so you should do the same. The conclusion is the answer to the question in summary form. And then the analysis is where you synthesize the law, the facts with the law. Okay? And notice they've got code sections. They've got revenue rulings. They've got, although they don't have it in here, they should probably have something that relates back to the regulations concerning this code section. Then you've got a court case. You may have more than one court case involved here. So bottom line, and when it comes to court cases, I'm not sure where all of you are. Some of you may be in Oregon. Probably most of you are. If you are, you're going to follow the federal, well, you're going to follow tax court, right? Certainly if you have a tax court case, that applies. If you have a federal district court case in Oregon, I want you to follow that, cite that. If you have a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case that applies to the issue in the assignment, you would use that. Now, if you're in California, Washington, Idaho, you might have a different, you're going to use the tax court still, but if you have if you have to go to a federal district court case, again, you're going to have to go to something in your jurisdiction. See what else. And of course, if there's a Supreme Court case, any jurisdiction can use that. I don't think that's the case here, but so anyway. This is what I want you to do, and probably the most difficult part is the analysis, synthesizing, bringing together, and applying the law to the facts. Okay? You're not going to be able to write your summary conclusion until you've analyzed this case. You're not going to be able to analyze this case until you have first formulated the issue in question form and found and researched and read and understand how the authorities apply to this fact situation. Okay? You have almost 2 weeks to do this. It's due June 10th. And so this is kind of your final paper. Okay, even though it's only worth 50 points, I want you to write, and again, it's probably not, this issue is not as detailed probably as what you have here in this particular case, but it may be. I don't know. So, and there are at least 2 issues involved here. Okay? Not in this particular fact situation you're looking at, but in your assignment. Okay? So let's go back to that. So she's a stay-at-home mother. Her husband's a dentist. You know, some of this is just like irrelevant. It doesn't matter if she was the editor of a local newspaper before she had kids. And so now she's making quilts in her spare time. On average, she makes and sells 3 to 5 quilts per year. She maintains a written log of her transactions, which lists the name and address of each purchaser and the sold price. However, she does not track the cost of raw materials or perform any kind of profitability analysis. She uses a spare bedroom in the family home to store her quilting materials and use her sewing machine. Its square footage comprises of the Bears 175 square feet of the Bears 2,650 square foot residence, and then it gives you the expenses and the sales for 4 years. Okay. Need to change one thing because it says 2014, that should say 2015. So let's make that change real quick and save it. Let's change these years too. So this would be 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. So we just, and the reason I changed that is because, I mean, I want it to be applicable to what's going on right now. We are dealing with 2015 tax year in 2016, so I want it to be completely relevant to what's happening with this course. All right, so we save that. Sorry to do this while I'm speaking with you, but I just realized we have a little updating to do here. Okay. All right, so back to this. Use this as your guide. Some of it may apply, some of it may not. You may have other types of authorities that this particular situation didn't. It may have some of the same things. Okay? All right, so where to find authorities if you don't have one of these tax services? Identify the issues. First of all, put them in the form of a question. Find out what the key research terms would be. For this particular fact situation, can we think of any issues involved here with this quilt making and selling business, if you want to call it a business? Well, what's the issue? Well, again, I can think of 3 or 4 just right off the top of my head. Is this a business or something else? So determining that question right there, what is this that she is doing, kind of establishes how and what she can deduct as a deductible tax expense. And then you get into other questions, such as, well, if this is a business expense, is it even reasonable? Because, it's got to be ordinary, necessary, and reasonable to be a deductible business expense, but first and foremost, it's got to be a business expense. And in order to be a business expense, you have to be a business, right? So I've kind of thrown you a softball there to get you started, but you probably would have found those issues in the first place. The other issue, they mentioned the square footage of the house. Well, how is that applicable? So think about that. So I think I've given you 3 or 4 different things to think about while you're reading. All right, back to this. Since we have no real tax service, and again, if you're going to work for a small to medium-sized firm, you're going to, have this issue. Of course, if you live in a metropolitan area, you might be able to access a tax service at one of the local universities, or they may have what they call a tax alcove, an area of the library that's exclusively dealing with tax publications. If so, hey, go there and see what you can get. But here, what you've got is Pierce Library, and you can look a couple of different places. You can certainly look under journals, but you can also go to the databases, which also has journals in it. And so just, if you go to the databases section, and, feel free to look through all A through Z, but I'll just show you what I use. I run into some of the same problems you're going to have here. I don't have a tax service. And so what you have here, you have EBSCO legal collection. It gives you scholarly law journals. Remember, this is a law issue. When you are dealing with a tax situation, you're applying the tax law, okay? So, even though you're not lawyers, you're applying your client's tax situation to the law. So, it's kind of like the unauthorized, or it's like the practice of law. It's the one little area where you're authorized to practice if you're, doing this stuff. So, EBSCO Legal Collection, Legal Information Reference Center. I've never been there. I don't think that's a big deal. Legal Track, Major Law Reviews, Legal Newspaper. This is a big one. LexisNexis Academic. And what you can do here, excuse me. What you can do in LexisNexis Academic is formulate search terms. So if you look down here, certainly you can do an academic search right here. You could look up legal cases. You could certainly, if you had a citation, do it that way. Probably the best way of doing it is by topic, though. And so here you have to figure out the buzzwords to apply. Okay? Now let's just put in a topic. Let's see. And this is totally improvised here, so. Let's see what it says here below. Yeah, citations must be exact. And so you might try topic. See what happens here. Hobby losses is what I put in. And so it gives you some things that they find where hobby losses are at issue. Okay? Now, let's see. Here you have a subject by, search by subject or topic, and this is also pretty useful. And so you could search law reviews, you could search of course, federal statutes and regulations, which, that's probably a good place to start right there. Law reviews would be a good place to get some background information. That will lead you to some of these authorities as well, and of course, will lead you to federal cases concerning your issue. So this area right here is kind of important, and that's if I were you, that's where I would start. That's where I normally start anyway, is with background reading such as law reviews. Okay. Let's go back. I think there's one more. No, that's really it. Okay. LexisNexis Academic will probably be your biggest source. Another good source is the good old irs.gov website. And so here you would just find the terms you would use and type them in the search. And, there may be some other areas in here. There's help and resources. You're not a tax pro, so you're not going to get much help there. You may be a tax pro in the future, but you're not now. You actually have to be registered with them as a tax practitioner. So, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's not going to take you 2 weeks, but do start early so that you can write a draft and revise as needed. A good tax research memo, just like any type of paper, requires work and rework and rework or rework. So, this is not something you just sit down and do over, lunch. This is not an academic type of paper like you wrote if you took the basic income tax class with EOU. It's not that kind of a research paper. This is short, to the point, succinct. Tell us what the conclusion is based upon the facts and the law. Okay, so, and a lot of that's done in the analysis. That's going to be the big piece of this, and a big part of your grade is how well you synthesize and apply the facts, the law to the facts. Okay, so anyway, I hope you take the time to do this right, because this is something that you can take and show an employer if you do it right, and they will, I guarantee you, be quite impressed.